Well, hello, Peggy Greenberg. I'm so happy to be here with you today to have a conversation about something that we're both so passionate about. I'm so happy to not only talk with you about facilitation, but just knowing the wealth of experience that you have from directing large professional development programs, both at large healthcare systems and the Senate, and of course, where you and I met at Harvard. And so I'm excited to talk with you about facilitation. And so let's start off. I'd love to hear your thoughts about why you believe facilitation skills are so important.
Yes. I do believe facilitation skills are critically important. And as I often say to my students that have taken this session or similar sessions that I've done, facilitation is really a skill that we can utilize not only in our professional lives, but also in our personal lives as we work in our communities or our schools or our religious organizations. When we know how to facilitate, when we know how to get people together and get them to come to common ground and to come to decisions and to with new ways of doing things, we can use that skill in so many different arenas. So for that reason, I always say this is a skill that you'll find yourself using in many different places. And clearly in the workplace, facilitation is so critically important as we work together in groups. And again, we try to improve our products, our services, or whatever it is that we do. So it's a skill that goes across many different avenues of our life.
So I don't think of it in that, when I hear you describe it, I don't think of it as much as a professional skill. I think of it almost as a life skill, the way you talk about it.
It is a life skill. And I think we all know people, and maybe we haven't identified why we think that person is so effective, but many times it's because they're a good facilitator. They're really good at getting different points of view out on the table, of hearing from everybody, and then somehow getting people to come to some common understanding about what it is that we're talking about or what the needs are. So it very definitely is a life skill.
So that's a perfect segue to my next question, Peggy, which is about group dynamics. When we talked about the course design, you emphasized the importance of spending time around group dynamics. Can you talk about that a bit?
Sure. Whenever we work with a group, and particularly as we facilitate with a group, as long as there are people in the room, and when I say room, by the way, I'm talking either physically or virtually, as most of us are working now. So everything that I talk about in regard to facilitation skills, all of these things can be applied virtually or physically. But whenever we're in a room with a group of people, there are always things going on. There's always a dynamic between each person in the room with every other person in the room. So as we facilitate, I think it's critically important that we're able to recognize what's going on in the room. I say to people, learn how to read the room. And we read the room certainly by listening to what people are saying, by looking at them. What's their body language telling us? Are they telling us that they're eager to be a part of a conversation, or have they pushed back and they're just, go ahead, I don't even care what happens. So when you're able, as a facilitator, when you're able to read the room, I think you're much more able to get a group to move and to get a group to come to some kind of a conclusion, or to reach the outcomes that you're the intended outcomes for that particular gathering. So reading a room and reading people is a core competency to effective facilitation.
When I think about that, two things come to mind. One, the question of psychological safety, which is something we're talking a lot about now. And two would be cultural dynamics, because depending on who's in the room, if you will, there are certainly different cultural norms to take into consideration with regard to communication and engaging with groups of people, particularly people that you may not know very well or that you haven't had the opportunity of spending time with. But when you think about psychological safety, how does this endear psychological safety when a facilitator is adept in bringing everyone into a conversation?
Right. I think one of the primary responsibilities of a facilitator is to assure the psychological safety of everyone that's in the room. And so that means that as a facilitator, I've got to constantly monitor and maintain the space that allows for everyone to participate, and that allows for everyone to participate in the style and the way that works for them and that works for the group. So the notion of keeping the space safe, psychologically safe for everyone, no matter where they are, no matter what their background is, whatever, but keeping that space safe for everyone is core to being an effective facilitator. And it's when you talk about the cultural differences, Brenda, that's why I think it's so important that when we facilitate, that we know who's going to be in the room, and that we gather. That's one of our important duties as facilitators, is to do our homework and to prepare for that facilitated session. And so one of the ways that we prepare is we find out who's going to be in the room, and what can I find out about them? What can I know about them? Maybe I can even talk to them in advance, which I very, very often prefer to do, so that I get a sense of who they are and what they would like to see as the outcomes of the session. So again, all of that, doing your homework, and then constantly throughout a facilitated session, keeping front and center, am I keeping everyone safe? And am I doing that in a way that allows for full participation because people do feel safe?
I like what you said about communicating with participants in advance. Certainly, depending on the size of the group, that could be really worthwhile.
Mm-hmm.
In coaching, we talk about meeting people where they are. And sometimes, particularly when you're bringing a group together under those circumstances, it's important to do that, to facilitate full participation by everyone. And that's not the same thing across a group of 10 or 20 people. So
Right.
And so when I think about being an adept facilitator, two words come to mind: credibility and confidence. How important do you think it is to come across as being credible and confident?
Oh boy, it's incredibly important. And think about it from your own perspective. Think about the times when you've participated in something, and the person who was there, presumably to guide you and to get you from point A to point B, for some reason looked very disorganized or very unsure of themselves, or immediately, all of us would kind of go, oh my goodness, this is going to be dreadful. We're never going to get there. We're going to be here all day. We're never going to get, anywhere. So credibility and confidence, when people perceive that the facilitator is confident and the facilitator is credible because of the way they're interacting with people and because of the preparation that they've done and the pre-communication that they've had with people, etc., then the role of facilitator is so much easier and possible, quite frankly. I don't think, if you don't come across as being confident and so people don't feel that you're very credible, I don't think you can effectively facilitate, because no one wants to be a part of that. And so people are just going to kind of pull back, and they're going to, oh, we have to do this, but this person doesn't really know what they're talking about. I mean, I've been in sessions where clearly the person facilitating knows nothing about the group, absolutely nothing. And as a result of that, it's not possible to facilitate if people feel like you don't know anything about them, and you're just there, but you're not really there to fulfill an important role. So to the extent that someone is facilitating and can demonstrate their credibility and their confidence, it goes a long way. And I always say to people, you might not feel very confident because maybe it's the first time you're doing this or whatever, but act as though you are, and look as though you are, and sound as though you are. And that way people will believe it. Now you might be, absolutely terrified and you're really kind of struggling, but don't appear that way,
Yeah.
because you want people to feel like this is someone who's credible and who can guide us to where we're going.
And this is one of the key elements, I think, about the key differentiators, I should say, about this offering that we're talking about. And I'm so excited about the program design, because you take extra care to make sure that you help people to develop that confidence and build that credibility. So can you talk to us a little bit about the design of the program?
Right. The design of the program is a combination of both group work and individual work, because we know that, you can get there's a lot to be said about just the technique of facilitation. There's a lot to be said about reading group dynamics, asking good questions, doing your homework before, etc. So we'll spend a session on the process of facilitation and outlining that, and really describing for the participants the steps of facilitation and all the ingredients that go into it. But then everyone that's in the group will have the opportunity for a private coaching session with me in between session 1 and session 2, because in session 2, everyone will do a mini facilitated session. And so I will provide everyone with some scenarios, and it will be up to them to facilitate the rest of the participants in the group. And I know that can be a little anxiety provoking for people, and people just have a lot of questions about facilitation. And so I think the addition of this individual coaching time that every participant will have between session 1 and session 2 to get them ready for their practice facilitation will hopefully enhance everyone's confidence and make people feel like, okay, I can do this. And I think the ability to, as I always say to people, we're going to try it out and try it on. When you hear a lot of concepts and you see someone else doing it, but then you really need an opportunity in a safe environment with good feedback from people who want you to do your best to try it out and try it on and see how you do, and listen to the feedback that you get and what you might do again in the future. So this program really is going to hit on many different cylinders. The process itself and all the important ingredients of being an effective facilitator, the opportunity for some one-on-one coaching with me for each participant, and then finally the opportunity for everyone to try it out and try it on, and to get some feedback from myself and from their colleagues that are part of the program as well, who, by the way, I think we have so much to offer each other in terms of feedback that we can give to improve our facilitation.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the demonstration, modeling behavior, but what it means to be in a psychologically safe environment. I keep coming back to that, but it's so important. And to have that safe space to really test drive and get feedback and really, engage in a way that you might not in other circumstances. So
Right.
that's very powerful.
Fortunately, I think in our busy world that we live in, and we're going from event to activity to event, we don't take time to really give feedback to each other or to request feedback from others. And so again, this I think is a very unique opportunity, and it starts doing something that I will recommend to all participants, and something that I feel is so important and has certainly led to my own development as a facilitator over the years, and that is self-reflection. And really taking the time, every single time we facilitate, taking the time to when it's over with, immediately when it's over with, using any format you want. Paper and pencil works just fine, but to say, what worked and what could I do differently the next time, and to really sort of start to track your own progress and keep this as a log, and constantly reminding yourself about, what could I do differently? What, maybe I need to learn something else. Maybe I need to witness someone else doing this. Maybe I need to read something or take a course or whatever. But I really do feel like being an exceptional facilitator is not something that you arrive at and then you're there forever. You're always improving. And you're always looking for what else can I learn? What else can I try to incorporate into my practice that will make me even better? And I feel like, that's the journey. And for me anyway, that's part of the excitement about it, is that you're never there. You're just always evolving and learning something, and you're effective, but you can always be more effective.
And I think the sooner we embrace that, the better, right? Because we're always waiting for, some type of graduation or some type of ceremonial arrival. And it's a work in progress. It's a journey ongoing. I'd like to just invite anyone that's listening live to chat in any questions that they may have while we're having this conversation. But while that's happening, I just would like to go back to what you said about, the development over time and keeping it fresh, because particularly in the virtual rooms that we all spend so much time in, I find that, things that were novel a year ago, different applications and things that we might have brought into the room are now somewhat obsolete. And so we always have to try new things. I think it's the same thing as we are developing our own competencies, would you say? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I do think that, up until a year and a half ago, I guess we're talking about, that's the time we've been working under these different circumstances. 2 years ago, if someone asked me if I would be able to facilitate virtually, I would have said no. I would have said, no, you cannot do that. You've got to have people breathing the same air in order to effectively facilitate. But when we're challenged and when we face a situation where the only option that we have is to have people on a Zoom call or to have people on a GoToMeetings or whatever, and that's the only option that we have, we learn to make adjustments for that. And I would be the first to say that I do think that facilitating virtually, it's a slightly heavier lift. I think you've got to plan it out so well. You've got to be hyper attentive to what's going on, and you've got to make sure that you're really engaging everyone that's in the room in order for it to be effective. But it's absolutely possible to do, and you can work with a group, and you can develop strategic plans. You can do team building. You can do a whole host of things virtually, and you can facilitate virtually. So it's possible. It's absolutely possible to do. But I do think that you've got to know the virtual space before you try to facilitate the virtual space, because it is different than having people in the room in a physical.
Yeah, and the reality is, as it appears, that we're going to be in this hybrid space, hybrid zone, I'll say, for some time to come, and so we can't rely on going back to the conference room or the hotel ballroom and things like that in the near future. So we've got to really pay more attention to how we keep this energetic and alive and really a meaningful experience for participants and for ourselves, to remove the anxiety of, I've got to facilitate another virtual meeting. So I think this serves to take it away. Yeah.
And I think as a facilitator, both live, but certainly in the virtual space, is to be very creative about how you can engage people. And what are some of the tools and the techniques that I have in the virtual space? And it seems like every single day there's a new possibility. There's a new way that you can engage people virtually. So as a virtual facilitator, I think you really have to be, you very much have to be looking around and seeing what's out there and what's possible and what can I do to engage people, because you want that same level of engagement that you would want if you were in a physical environment. So I think you've got to be very, very creative about how you do it. And remember, again, when you're facilitating, you're not, you are the guide on the side, and you're trying to get the group to come to a place and to reach an endpoint. And so whatever methods you can use to do that very creatively, I think is very, very important in the virtual space.
Absolutely, you're in service to the group. And that's what everyone will have the opportunity to learn by participating in this session. So I'm so excited. We will be posting dates for our first segment of this program in the next couple of weeks, probably, before the end of October. And so I hope that if you are looking for an opportunity to increase your facilitation skills and really become that master facilitator that you'd like to be, you'll consider joining Peggy Greenberg for Flawless Facilitation, which will give you an opportunity both to learn from other colleagues in the program, as well as to do individual work to address your own opportunities to become a great facilitator. Before we close, Peggy, who is the ideal person? I know we talked about this being a life skill. So when you think about participants in this program, who do you think should be there? Who should register?
Oh, well, it is a life skill, so I would say everyone, anyone. But I certainly think people who find themselves in positions where, again, positions either in their professional life or in their personal life, where there's a need for someone to take that role in a group and to really sort of step up and say, where are we headed here today, or to create that agenda in advance. So I personally think that people in all levels of professional life can be effective facilitators. I certainly think that people in management positions or supervisory positions, I think that your ability to facilitate when you have that kind of a role in an organization is so critical to the success of your group. So certainly anyone that's in a management or supervisory role. People who are training professionals. Training is not only about telling people, it's also about facilitating learning. And so I think people that are in training positions could benefit greatly from really understanding the process of facilitation and the skills and competencies that are involved there. So that's a pretty wide audience. So I hope we'll get people from many different walks that'll want to participate in this.
That's great. Well, I'm excited. So thank you so much for having this conversation and for sharing a little bit of a preview on what the course will be like and what people stand to learn and how it will be structured. So I appreciate your time today.
Well, thank you. And I look forward to seeing everybody in the Flawless Facilitation course.